Question. Numerous healers and spiritual people are now saying the karmic learning paradigm has been collapsed, that we are stopping that way of learning. Humanity is entering a new phase without that, they say, because karma was causing endless repeated looping in agony and traumatization that was sinking us further and further into shattered and damaged consciousness, rather than leading us into higher light and wholeness. In short, we as a species have learned everything we could by going about growth in that way. So it was decided at the higher levels of spirit that we would now enter a new paradigm. Presumably learning will be far, far slower, I suppose. The clairvoyants also report that they visually see the karmic grids have collapsed. I'm not sure what grids they mean, presumably those in our energy fields, which cause us to attract these kinds of patterns over and over. Could you ask the masters whether this is true? One major problem with learning through karma was that we often had many times repeated experiences of a highly traumatic nature that didn't seem fair or productive of growth, such as being sexually abused as children, which caused being repeatedly attacked later in life as well, in the same ways by other people, and often then for 18 to 20 lives thereafter, causing soul fracturing and even shattering of the lower dimensional levels of soul. This apparently has happened because the ruts of the energy experience become increasingly embedded in their fields, so they attract more and more of the same. It doesn't seem like a way to grow or learn from my perspective. Okay, well, I think that's an important question, and my immediate reaction to this is look around you, look at the headlines. Do you see any signs that people no longer need to learn from what I call the school of hard knocks, where they see the physical consequences of what they're doing? I would actually say that, if anything, I see it being increased, that people are becoming more and more polarized, more and more unbalanced, more and more extreme. So basically what I'm getting at is that if you just look at the signs, I don't see the signs of that. You can see the wars going on, the situation in the United States. I mean, there's more and more conflict, more and more confrontation. And this is exactly what the karmic paradigm is about. It's what I call the school of hard knocks. You are not open to learning from ideas alone. You're not open to learning through the mind. So you have to learn by physical circumstances. And I was a child. It was still allowed to spank children, and the idea was that if you couldn't learn through your ears, you had to feel it in your rear end. And that's essentially what karmic learning patterns is about. People are not open to any higher instructions from the ascended masters. So what I can say is that the masters are not agreeing with this. It's simply not decided. And the ascended masters have something called the Great Karmic Board, which are deciding what karmic cycles are being released. And they haven't said anything like this. But what they have said, which I have in my playlist about the next 12-year cycle, is that in the next 12 years, there will be a release of spiritual light that will actually accelerate people's lack of balance. People who are in an unbalanced state will become more unbalanced, therefore they will act out even more. And I have the whole playlist about this, so you can watch this, where I talk about this next 12-year cycle. So, however, let's step back a little bit also, because I understand that you can say that that the karmic learning paradigm has been collapsed. I would say that yes, for some people. In other words, what the Ascended Masters are also saying, they are releasing this spiritual light. And this means that people who are unbalanced will become more unbalanced. But people who have achieved some state of balance, who are willing to grow, they can grow even more. And so that means that there are people who can take advantage of this spiritual cycle, and they can grow without learning through karma, because they now have a higher opportunity to tune into the light and therefore grow without having to experience the physical consequences. So you can say that for some people, those in the highest level of consciousness, those who are most willing to look at themselves, yes, they have transcended the karmic learning paradigm. But for the majority of people on earth, no, they haven't transcended it. And it's likely to get more and more extreme in the coming 12 years, which I think you already see. So I understand that what is being said here is that one major problem with learning through karma was that we often had many times repeated experiences of highly traumatic nature that didn't seem fair or productive of growth. Yeah, well, it is actually fair because it's just the law of free will. People are given free will, and it's free, so they can choose anything they want. But the purpose of it is that people learn. But if they close themselves off to a higher learning, a higher awareness, they only learn by experiencing the physical consequences of their choices. How is it not fair that they're experiencing the physical consequences of their choices? You think about the alternative here, right? And this is something that it took me a long time to resolve, this whole enigma of free will. And at one point I realized that I actually had I had a view of free will that was really unrealistic, in the sense that I always was very much a person who wanted freedom, and I certainly don't want anybody to force me. I never wanted to be forced by anybody or manipulated by anybody. So I always claimed my right to have my freedom to make choices. But on the other hand, I looked at Earth and said, yeah, but people shouldn't be allowed to do something really bad, like the Holocaust. Somebody should have stopped them from doing this. God, why? It's the age-old question. Why does God allow evil to exist? But evil exists as a result of giving people free will. So, what would be the alternative? It would be that God gives people free will, but when they make certain choices, he goes in and says, oh yeah, I'm taking your free will here, so you can't do this. That's not free will, right? It's like I had an unrealistic, contradictory view of free will. I want to have free will, but I don't want it to be really free. And that just doesn't make any sense. The other thing that was very helpful to me in that regard was to realize, as I've explained in several videos, the Earth is an unnatural planet. And on an unnatural planet, people learn through the school of hard knocks. So in some cases, the only way they're going to learn is that the knocks become so hard that they say, I can't do this anymore. Is there a better way? And that's when the Ascended Masters can then step in and offer people a better way. So I actually, I understand, because I used to feel that way myself. So I understand why you can say, is it really productive that people are hurt over and over again in many lifetimes that they get into this spiral? But it's just, what's the alternative? I mean, the Ascended Masters are constantly with Earth, with people on Earth. And they are constantly offering people a way to rise from their current level of consciousness to the next level of consciousness up. And the only way people can go into a downward spiral is that they reject that. They reject that offering. And therefore, they go into the school of hard knocks, where they only learn by their physical circumstances. The Ascended Masters have total respect for free will. They're not allowed to violate people's free will. So they can offer people a higher awareness. If they reject it, karma becomes their teacher. And the Ascended Masters must simply stand back and allow this to unfold. Now, as I said, I understand you could say this is unfair. But what helped me overcome that was that I realized that the vast majority of planets in the world, a natural planet, where people are not learning through the school of hard knocks. They are learning by help from the ascended masters and by being willing to observe how the world around them works. So Earth is one of the few unnatural planets left in our sphere, and it's simply for those life streams that are so far haven't been willing to learn in a higher way. And therefore I learned that, you simply have to let this outplay itself. I just actually gave another answer about the Holocaust and how I learned to relate to that in a more peaceful way. And so you can watch that answer also if you want to understand more about this, the whole dynamic of the School of Hard Knocks. But it's just that, what I've seen over the years, many years I've been on the spiritual path, is that many spiritual people are avatars. I have a whole playlist where I talk about avatar psychology. And I totally understand the dynamic because I used to feel that way myself. I used to feel it's unbearable, the things that are happening on earth. But the only way I can bear it is because I have this spiritual teaching that says we can do something about it and it will get better, and it will get better soon. Transcending meditation was my first spiritual movement. The idea was there's a collective consciousness. When you meditate, you help raise the collective consciousness. If 1% of the population meditates, it can solve most of society's problems by raising the collective consciousness. In the Summit Lighthouse, which was my second spiritual movement, it was said that by giving these decrees to the ascended masters, like violet flame, we would transmute world karma, it was raise the collective consciousness, and we would overcome certain problems. And I'm not saying this is wrong, right? I think it does have an effect. When we raise our consciousness, we are pulling up on the whole. However, be careful here. Our raising of our consciousness cannot override other people's free will. When we raise our consciousness, it's like increasing the light in the dark cave, so people can see more clearly. But whether they choose to embrace what they see or not, we can't force them. And that's why there are still some people on earth that can only learn through the School of Hard Knocks. But what I have seen over the years with spiritual people is that there comes these periods, and it almost happens like on a cyclical basis, where a group of people in this New Age spiritual community, they get themselves into this, it's kind of like the same as the fundamentalist Christians who come to believe that on a certain date very soon, Jesus is going to come back and appear in the sky and roll up the world as a scroll. And you saw it, the latest example that I can remember is 2012, where many people had built this expectation that at 2012, when the Mayan calendar ended, there was going to be this major shift. The Earth was going to go into the fifth dimension and all our problems would be solved. Well, I'm sorry, do you see the world's problems being solved now that it's 13 years after 2012? So I'm just saying, over the years I've just seen this, and I've just come to a point where I've let go of this dream that next week or next month all our problems are going to be over because of some cosmic thing that's going to happen. What's going to cause problems to be over is that we raise our consciousness. And we do what we can do. We raise our consciousness individually, pull up on the whole. But it also requires other people to make the choice, to embrace that there is a better way to do things. And I can't predict when that's going to happen. So I'm just at peace with, watching the karmic learning paradigm unfold. And I do see that there is improvement, and especially with this 12-year cycle that the ascended masters have initiated, where they release more light. I think this will bring a lot of improvement in the next 12 years, but it doesn't mean that all of our problems are going to be over at the end of this 12-year cycle. So I'm just giving up on this whole end of the world, shift into another dimension, the savior returning mindset. I just see that there will be a gradual progression, and there will not be some huge breakthrough that will change everything. It's just not my view anymore. I don't know if there ever really was, but I was certainly hoping for something when I was younger. So I just think it's, you know, as I said, for some people the karmic learning paradigm have collapsed because they've transcended it, but certainly not for all. And if you get yourself into this mind of thinking, yes, now everything has changed and everything is going to get better, you will set yourself up for disappointment, because, you know, it's just not going to happen. You know, 2012 was a big thing. You remember 2000, year 2000, Y2K, how people thought something was going to happen there. I remember in the United States up to, throughout the 90s, there were various people who came out with these prophecies, Michael Scallion, Daniel Brinkley, and others, that major earth changes were going to happen at a certain date. And once you have seen this several times, that there were these prophecies made and they didn't come to pass, you kind of shift your view a little bit and say, let's just focus on the gradual changes instead of hoping for some miracle to happen next week.